Joining us now, the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl 54 champions, Super Bowl 55 participants, and hoping once again to get back to the Super Bowl for number 56, Brett Veach. Brett, welcome back. How are you, pal?
Mike, great to be here. Doing good. And like everyone else, they're excited about the schedule release coming up soon this week.
What's the first thing you look at when the Chiefs games become available to you?
Well, it's funny. I mean, in this position, certainly every game is tough. Honestly, when I look at it, when we have two home games back to back, because that's when I know my mom and dad's calling. They like to come out here for a week, and they always like to marry it up to when the Chiefs have back to back home games, so they get a 2-for-1, right? So I'm always looking for that first 2-game homestand and expecting a call from my mom and dad.
Now, wait, is this something that you view as a positive, or is it negative?
No, it's
reasonable minds could differ.
No, for sure it's a positive. As you get older, you don't get to see your parents as much. So anytime they get to come out here and visit the family and hang out, you always look forward to that. And they want to maximize their opportunity here. So them maximizing their opportunity is getting a week here with 2 home games. So typically the first thing I do is I look to see when we have that back-to-back home stand early in the season when the weather's nice, and call the fam and start working on travel for them to get out here.
And I'm being facetious. I think that's a great thing, and family is more important than anything else. And I don't want there to be any misunderstanding if your parents happen to see this. And if they're as proud of you as they should be, they probably watch every interview that you do. That said, does part of you hope there isn't a 3-game homestand?
Well, yeah, because if you have a 3-game homestand, then I guess you're going to have a 3-game road stand or play a bunch of road games. So typically like to have those home games late in the season. We have a tremendous home field advantage here, and as the games become more important and as the weather turns colder, especially here in Missouri, we certainly think that's a great advantage for us.
The Chiefs were one of the teams that was able to have a decent number of fans throughout the course of the season. What's your understanding about what the capacity will be at Arrowhead Stadium this year?
I mean, well, look, we're obviously very optimistic and like to think the light at the end of the tunnel is there. If you ask me, I hope we have a full capacity crowd there at Arrowhead Stadium. Now, again, Mark Donovan and will work with our staff upstairs and work with the local government and work with the league. And certainly safety is the most important thing, but I'm an optimistic person, and I'd like to think we'd have full crowds this season.
We're coming up on 2 weeks since the 2021 draft. For the first night, you had no first-round pick. That pick was traded to the Ravens for tackle Orlando Brown. What do you do during the first round of a draft, that 4-hour marathon, and you don't have a pick? How do you keep yourself occupied?
Well, yeah, so the first 10 or 15 picks are rather boring because, you don't have a pick, and there's no moves to be made. Once you get into the teens and 20, those you start kind of doing, your number game. So every team has basically a percentage of players that they need available to have a chance at a certain player. So once we get into the 20s, we're really starting to recalculate our second round board and to see if we get the numbers that we need to have specific players that we like in that zone for tomorrow. And then so it starts off rather boring, but once you get into the 20s, you start doing the calculations in your mind and you get with your staff. And then as soon as the last pick is in for the day, and then it's a complete dismantling of the board, and you're just restacking the board as if the Friday was the first day of the draft. So it starts off slow, but like everything else in this league, it picks up the intensity pretty quick, and then you're on to Friday, and you're excited for us and for our situation to add 2 new players.
I'm not looking for names, but was there any talk, any possibility, any discussions about possibly finding a way into the bottom of round 1 for the Chiefs?
No, not at all. Simply because we exhausted those possibilities during, the off season, and as we looked at options and what we could do, we went through that process. And then when Orlando Brown became available, we decided to go in that direction. Certainly we wanted to address the offensive line in the offseason, and we were able to add a quality interior player in Joe Thuney, and we still were looking for some tackle help, and in particular wanted to solidify that left tackle position. Certainly went through those exercises in the weeks leading up to the draft and what it would cost to move up, and what would be most advantageous for us both in the short and long term. But then when the Orlando Brown trade became available, that was the direction we decided to go. And once we made that move, we were certainly content on working in volume and just trying to focus on maximizing our picks throughout the rest of the draft.
The Ravens are one of the Chiefs' top conference rivals. Quarterback Lamar Jackson has called the Chiefs the Ravens' kryptonite. When an opportunity arises to trade for one of the Ravens' starting offensive linemen, do you stop and think, where's the catch here? Why are they willing to send one of their best offensive linemen to a team that they are trying so desperately to get past in the postseason?
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily did. I mean, look, that's a great organization, and Eric does a great job there. And Ozzie before him, they are always winning games and winning conference championships and division championships and what have you. So, I think it's more of a situation by situation. I mean, look, I think it was made early on that Orlando would like to play left tackle, and you certainly knew of his family history there at Baltimore, and you also knew that they respected him. And then I really get the sense they wanted what was best for him and the organization. It was a unique scenario. And then Mike, you have the Suter angle. I mean, left tackle. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that have left tackles. There's a bunch of teams that have high picks that want to allocate those high picks in left tackle. So I think we were just in a really good position in regards to a specific need and a fit, and they had a player that they wanted to help out. But again, I think you have to marry, what that player is looking for with the team and their specific needs. Again, you'll have X amount of teams that already have starting left tackles. Well, he wanted to play left tackle. And then you'll have some teams that could use a left tackle, but they may be picking the top 10, top 15. So then I think it kind of narrows your suitors. So I think we just looked out we just had that specific need, and they had a specific player that was looking for that position.
And I've heard plenty of general managers, coaches, and owners say in recent years that when you give up that first-round pick for a player, that player becomes your de facto first-round pick. The difference, though, obviously, is contractual. And we've seen this trend in recent years, whether it's Laramie Tunsil, whether it's Jalen Ramsey, Jamal Adams. Guys get traded for one or more first-round picks without a new contract on the way in. Did you try to work out a new deal with Orlando Brown as part of the trade, or were you happy to say, we'll take this guy and we'll worry about the contract later?
Well, once Baltimore allowed us to talk to Orlando and his agent, and they, granted us that permission, we had lengthy conversations. And, one of the things we talked about was still the unknown cap moving forward. And certainly, we all believe that a healthier cap is on the horizon. And we still have some things that, we wanted to do. And we just came to understanding that, we're certainly going to be committed to making this work long term, but both parties would be happy to let it play out and then, work off a structure next season when we have a little bit more clarification of, what the cap will be in 22 and where we'll be moving forward. I think we'll have a lot more information. I think we'll all be able to do something that, helps both sides.
You mentioned Joe Thuney, a guy who was franchise tagged last year by the Patriots. Obviously, it would have been very expensive for them to tag him again, a 20% raise over his tag number from last year, but they let him walk away. They didn't sign him to a long-term deal, and they had the cap space. They had the cash to do it. Is there any element when you're dealing with a guy who had played for the Patriots that the Patriots are letting leave? Is there an element of caution, a buyer beware? Is there something we're not missing here? Why is it that the team that's had him for 5 years doesn't want to keep him? Did that creep into your thought process at all when you evaluated Joe Thuney?
No, not at all. They're also a team that did franchise him the year before. So, Joe's as consistent and reliable as you get. I mean, you talk about a player that kind of checks all the boxes: smart, tough, durable, position versatility. A player that they coveted enough last year to franchise. Certainly, double franchise tags, are more expensive, and they were obviously had a lot of things that they wanted to accomplish. So sometimes, the level of that double tag gets in the way of all the things they want to do with in regards to, dealing with the overhaul of what they've done there. So, I don't think that ever crossed our mind. We were just looking for, our ability to upgrade that offensive line in all areas. And again, you're talking about a guy with a long history of player in person coming back from his time at North Carolina State, and the information we had on him, and just look at how he handled his career in such a professional manner and played at such a high level. He's very much the model of consistency, and we're extremely excited to add him to our roster.
Sammy Watkins left for the Ravens in free agency. That was a guy you kept around for 3 years. What's your plan for replacing his impact and production in the offense?
Yeah, well, Sammy was a big part, and it's been said many times when he was healthy. I mean, our offense was unstoppable at times. So it'll be tough to replace Sammy. I mean, we're excited about the players that we have on our roster, though. I think we all know how talented Tyreek is, and we're all expecting a big step up in McCole Hardman. Byron Pringle is a guy that has kept developing and getting better and better year after year. Demarcus Robinson, we were able to retain, and he has a lot of familiarity in this offense, a lot of experience. And we're excited about our rookie, Cornell Powell. He was a guy that we felt very fortunate to get there in the 5th round. We were able to have him and a pass receiving tight end in Noah Gray. So those are 2 bigger bodies. Obviously, Sammy was a bigger body, helped work the middle of the field with Travis, but now being able to bring, a pass receiving tight end to take some pressure off Travis and Noah, and then having a bigger body receiver that can really be a post type player for us. And Cornell Powell, we're excited to work both those guys in. And, listen, Antonio Callaway's here too. And he's been having, obviously just all virtual meetings now, but we like to think that if we can get him up and running, he'll be able to add another, set of speed in that group. So, we're excited. We think we have a lot of talent. There's going to be a lot of competition at that position, and inevitably, if we get Pat time, those receivers will get open.
When we had this conversation last year, you had used your first-round pick on running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We had some laughs about that. Sims and I both were flagging him to the Chiefs, and you had noted that before the draft, and he still was there when you picked him. Now, a year into his career, he had that big performance against the Texans to start the season. After that, not the same kind of impact. What would you say you expect to see from him in the second year of his career in the NFL?
Oh, we certainly have high expectations for Clyde. And as you know, Mike, he had that Saint game late in the season. When I look back at the totality of our season, going 14-2 and having a good run there, and then falling short in the playoffs. I spoke with Mickey a few weeks ago, and I really think that Saint game was the turning point in our season, just because it was such a physical game, and we had a bunch of guys get banged up. Clyde was one of them. So Clyde obviously had a great year, but he missed a chunk of time there right after that Saint game. He had a groin and a high ankle strain, and listen, one of those injuries is hard enough to come back on. He had both of those. He was still able to get healthy for the playoffs and contribute in both the Buffalo game and the Tampa Bay game. But I think Clyde is an extremely special player. I think if he stays healthy with the addition of the linemen that we've added this offseason, we certainly expect big things from Clyde. And in particular, I think you'll see him more in the passing game and just, being able to utilize him in all different ways. And remember, we didn't even have an offseason last year with these rookies. They had to come in here right out of college, Zoom meeting, and then boom, they're out there day one of training camp. But credit to Clyde. I mean, he was, one of those rookies that really smart player, picked it up quick, was able to start game one, and certainly had a impact right out of the gate. But again, he stays healthy and stays on the track he's on. He'll be a special player for a long time.
You mentioned injuries, and the most significant injury issue for the team last year, that turf toe suffered by Patrick Mahomes, plagued him in the postseason, ultimately had surgery just 3 days after Super Bowl 55. How do you strike the balance as an organization between Patrick Mahomes using his incredible ability to escape pass rushers? And regardless of straight line speed or anything else, he is able to escape those guys. But if you run him too much, you could have wear and tear. You could have toe injuries, foot injuries, knee injuries, ankle injuries. How do you strike that balance as he progresses deeper into his career?
Well, that's I'll leave that one in the hands of Coach Reed and our play callers. It's funny though, Mike. A lot of these teams, are heavy RPO teams, and there are a lot of times where Pat's making his own call and his own check, and Coach and I will joke about it all the time. And there's been countless numbers of games and carries by Pat where Coach and I would joke after the game. Coach would say, I told Pat to make sure he's giving, or he's pitching, he's not running the ball. But it's one of those things. It's that fine line. I mean, he's such a competitor, and you can give him all the warnings, but once he's on that field, he wants to go out there, he wants to dominate, and he wants to put his team in the best position possible. And unfortunately, sometimes for us, he'll throw his body around. And but it's that constant communication and living for the next down and being smart. And you like to think as these players go on from year to year, they learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And, certainly with Pat, we want to exercise the utmost of cautions with him. And, I think he understands that, but it's just something the coaches work on a continual basis to try to control the emotions and the competitiveness. Unfortunately, with Pat, he's such a fierce competitor. It's tough to do.
5 years ago, Dave Gettleman was the general manager of the Panthers, and I asked him several times throughout the offseason, have you watched Super Bowl 50? Have you watched Super Bowl 50? And I'm not sure that he ever has or ever did. Have you watched Super Bowl 55?
I've watched it, when we got back. Certainly you watch it the next day. But like every Super Bowl, highlights and replays are played a lot. So I find myself, anytime there's a recap of the game or any highlights, quickly turning the channel and get into something different, because it was a tough one to watch. I mean, we had such a great year, and it was such a crazy year with the pandemic and all the rules and restrictions. And our guys certainly overcame a lot of hurdles, and, best record in franchise history, 14-2. Had a really good performance against Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. And unfortunately, this league is you say it every year, it's a battle of attrition. And, we were just some bodies short. And now that's taking nothing away from Tampa. They played an unbelievable game. They were hot at the right time. They were healthy. You're hot and healthy in those playoffs. It's tough. And a couple of years ago, we got hot and healthy, and we were able to finish the deal. And this year we just came a little bit short on the healthy side of things. And hopefully the work that we've done this offseason, the depth we built on both the offense and defense line will help us survive a 17-game schedule.
What was the number one thing, though, that stood out to you when you watched the game that is relevant to your job? What do I need to do to help us avoid an outcome like this based upon what you saw in Super Bowl 55? What's that one thing that stood out?
I think it just reinforces things that, we're already aware of. And it is just it's a battle of attrition. I mean, we didn't have both starting tackles, and we had an offensive guard get hurt earlier in the season, and we had two players opt out. So, we were shorthanded to begin with. But the reality of it is every team has the same scenarios they have to play. And every year teams lose players, and it's our responsibility and our job to make sure that the roster's deep. But on top of that, that your practice squad's always deep and healthy and competitive, because it's interesting. I mean, you can look at all these rosters day one and look at your starting lineup week one, game one, and then look at it week 16 or 17. It'll be completely different. I mean, you'll have two or three guys that came out of nowhere that are starting. You couldn't believe they're starting. So, but it happens, and you mentally prepare yourself as you go into this off season and you go into this training camp. Look at your roster, and two or three of these guys that you have starting day one will not, unfortunately, will be on IR. And are you deep enough? Can you handle 2-3 injuries at a specific position? And where can you get better depth? And that's why there's really no off season, because even during this stage of the spring, we're just trying to get the competitive balance of this 90-man as best we can, because we know it's only a matter of time before your practice squad players become starters and your backups become starters. So it's really just surviving the marathon that is the NFL season.
And from a glass half full standpoint, the thing that really resonates with me from Super Bowl 55, there were a couple of efforts by Patrick Mahomes, some of the best incompletions I've ever seen in my life, willing the ball toward a receiver. I mean, that level of determination, drive, never quit, competitiveness, and you throw in the talent, you really do have something special there.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm certainly biased, but he's the best player in the NFL, and that's comforting to know that you got a great head coach and you have a generational talent. And when I say he's the best at every level, his competes, the way he prepares, the way he leads, still humble, still hungry. And listen, we're very fortunate to have him. Now, it was our job to go out there and make sure that he's protected and continue to get him weapons, but it's certainly an exciting feeling for us, for our organization, for our city, to know that, when the game's kicked off on Sunday, that number 15 is our quarterback.
Hey, last thing for you, and I have to say thank you for giving us a nice little area of news and developments and everything associated that comes from that revolutionary change to the numbering system that the Chiefs proposed. And I know the basic reason was we ran out of numbers last year, but after the rule went through, Brett, Tom Brady started complaining about it. And I don't know why he didn't complain about it ahead of time. Maybe he didn't know. But what do you understand his concern to be? And do you think there's any merit to his belief that it's a dumb change to allow so many guys to wear single digits and linebackers to wear 1 all the way up to 49?
Well, I mean,
59.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, there's certainly always varying opinions, especially when you make rule changes to things that have been in place for such a long time. And they're certainly traditionalists. And listen, I had a long conversation with Clark before working with this. We were just in this unique situation where we have a bunch of retired numbers. I think we have 12 or 13 numbers retired, 10 of which are skill players. Last year, we had 16 players on the practice squad. We had the ability to flex these players up and down. And we were just literally running out of numbers to give defensive backs, receivers, and really it was just a need for us. We just needed the ability with the expanded rosters and the expanded practice squads and flexing people up and down, just more flexibility from numbers. I think the 1 week we had 3 players wearing number 30 out there on the practice field. And I kind of said to our equipment manager, I said, man, we have to do this. If college can do it, why can't we do it? I mean, the college players are wearing numbers at different positions. And I do think though that every team kind of monitors the distribution of numbers in a certain way. And Clark and I talked about this. I think in general, we'd like to keep the single digits for quarterbacks and specialists. It could overflow into specific first-round picks or what have you. I don't think we're just going to start handing out 1 to the first come, first serve or 2s and 3s. But I think for us, it was just a matter of it's inevitable. It's going to come down. Sooner or later, rosters, practice squads have already gotten bigger. Rosters will eventually get bigger, and sooner or later, you're going to need the numbers. So let's just start working this in now and getting used to this numbering system like they do in college.
And my understanding, Brett, is it sailed through like 4 or 5 teams maybe were against it. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the vote was overwhelmingly in support of. And, I think the biggest detractors would probably be just some jersey sales on the marketing side. I mean, a lot of these players, you know how it is, Mike, they have to buy out those numbers. So some will, some won't. And I told Clark and Mark, we won't have to worry about that because, guys like Pat and Travis, they sell so many jerseys that it would be a very good business decision to change numbers because it would cost them a ton of money.
Hey, do you know if the Buccaneers voted against the rule?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't believe so, but I wouldn't quote me on that.
Yeah, I don't know why Tom Brady didn't say anything before the vote. He made some arguments afterward, and they really haven't gotten much traction. But it was a fascinating little wrinkle. Unexpected, out of the blue, made for a robust offseason. Things we can continue to talk about as these new players get their new jerseys. Brett, we appreciate your time. Thanks again for sharing some of your knowledge and experiences with us. Congratulations on all your success. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.